Thank you, sir.
Took me a second.
That's why we have you.
Yeah, that's it. I'm done.
That's okay. I'm heading home for soda.
Yeah.
There's nothing more I can do.
Now on your own, sir.
There's nothing more. Looky there, 7 o'clock. It is 7 o'clock. If you join us, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Ms. Cody, let's see who's here.
Councilmember Davis. Here. Councilmember Curtis.
Here.
Deputy Mayor DeRosa. Here. Mayor Johnson.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Bowman.
Here.
Councilmember McCoy.
Here.
Councilmember Walters.
Here.
The clerk is present. Roll has been called, Mayor.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additions or subtractions from the agenda? Thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Council member reports. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I just want to say that I attended the grand opening for the pitch and putt disc golf course on Sunday. And there was a really great turnout, lots of families, people of all ages and abilities. It seemed like it was a really welcomed attraction, and I look forward to learning how to play disc golf now.
So it's disc golf, not disco golf? Can
I
you
mean,
wear lime green pants?
It'll
And
probably be both.
you can, okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, we're moving on to you, Ms. Erdman. Oh, no, we're moving on to me.
You still have a few on there.
Oh, yeah. Council, I see Mr. Brown here. Ms. Brown, please, if you will. Mr. Brown has graciously accepted to be on the Parks and Community Engagement Board through the next couple of years and a half.
Is that how much time it is?
I know. At some
How I
point,
know
we'll,
that.
some point we'll offer you parole, but yeah, it's 2.5 years from now. So make a short timer's calendar.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. Please.
Thank you. I'm honored to serve, and I'm honored that several of you had reached out to me about the opportunity and encouraged me to apply. I think Councilmember McCoy may have filled out the application on my behalf and then signed my name to it. No, as a lifelong Battlegroundian, now a homeowner and probably lifelong resident here. I'm honored to serve. I'm looking forward to kind of learning more about how the city functions and how we can get people engaged and how we can make Battleground a place that people don't just come here to live and then go to work, but they come here to recreate and come here to play and enjoy and have lots of things that they can do to fill their free time. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be educational and a good opportunity.
Pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks for volunteering. Mr. Olson. Pleasure to have you, sir. Mr. Olson is being appointed to the Planning Commission through the end of the year, and then we'll go from there. So you're taking 4 months here, and we'll figure it out from there.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Please tell us a little bit about you, if you don't mind.
All right, my name's Casey Olson. I grew up in Vancouver, Washington, and I graduated from Fort Vancouver High School in 2000. And from there, I joined the U.S. Army. Retired in 2020. Moved back up here with my wife and son. Worked for the Oregon Office of Emergency Management for a little bit, and then finally settled here with Bonneville Power Administration as emergency management specialist. I think that's yeah. But I'm a resident here now. We settled here, planning on being lifelong residents.
So that sums you up.
Yep, there you go.
Perfect. Sam, I don't know, has anyone reached out yet other than myself to get in touch with you?
Yes, Sam has, and we look forward to meeting, I think, tomorrow, right?
Wonderful. It's a pleasure to have you as well, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. Okay, now we're moving on. It is your turn now.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to turn it over to Chief Work for promotion.
So, council members, good evening. Nice to be with you all today. I once again have the great pleasure of a promotion year. This is my first promotion for a sergeant moving to lieutenant. So we're able to expand our capacity a little bit with this promotion as we have talked over the last a couple of years or so. I appreciate your support in making this happen. Lieutenant Purdue, when he's all said and done, will be our operations lieutenant in charge of patrol and training and a few other things. I wanted to give you just a little information about him that I did learn. And first of all, he's a Castle Rock guy. He grew up there, went to high school there, and graduated there in '94, and then on to Wazoo after that in Pullman itself, with a storied career that he can't talk about anymore, apparently. Graduated there in '99 from with a criminal justice degree, a Bachelor of Arts in criminal justice, and then started his police work in Castle Rock in '99 as well. And then a couple years later, in 2002, he came to Battleground. We've had him here in Battleground since '02, and I think it was '06 he promoted to sergeant. And he's been a sergeant with us ever since in a variety of capacities in patrol and detectives. And he's also been a part of our firearms instructor cadre over a bunch of years. And he's been on the Southwest Washington Regional SWAT team for about 14 years, since 2008. Yeah, so he's been on the regional SWAT team for a long time. He brings not only the expertise from that training and experiences to Battleground, but he is a great liaison for us around the entire region. He's also one of our state certified patrol tactics instructors. And I look forward to all kinds of great things from Lieutenant Purdue. He's married to Jessica, and they have two kids. Daughter Peyton is 18. Her son Gavin is 16. And Jason has recently got into, he likes all kinds of sports, but recently got into scuba diving with his daughter. And they've traveled to Belize and Hawaii and Puget Sound, I guess. I'm not sure what's next, but I don't know how you beat that.
Travel.
Yeah. There's really all I have to say. I really do appreciate the support that I see from around the county and the SWAT team and some of their other coworkers here. It shows a lot about the respect that people have for Jason. I think he's going to be an outstanding addition to our administrative group here, and look forward to many years in this capacity. So congratulations to you. And she has.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly affirm that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America and of the state of Washington. I will abide by the law enforcement code of ethics and will diligently and impartially perform all duties of police lieutenant for the city of Battleground, County of Clark, State of Washington, as such duties are prescribed by law.
We'll take about 5 or so minutes for pictures and such, and
Give him
of course, he'll have a chance to
yes, sir.
tell us his tale.
You bet. You want to say a couple things first? And then we can get
The podium's yours, sir.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I would just like to thank the city, the Battleground Police Department, my family, my mom and dad are here, my kids, the members of my former SWAT team, the Southwest Washington Regional SWAT team, a lot of really good fellows back there, and all the employees of the Battleground Police Department. I look forward to the new challenge and the future of the department.
Always a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
We'll take 5 minutes if you'd like to take some pictures and stuff. Get out of the way.
Ready? Thank you. Yeah. it looks weird.
Pictures in front of the, in front of the. Oh, look, get up, everyone who's related, please. Anyone who's not related. I forgot. See, I forgot. Just went right past me again.
I'll keep reminding you, don't worry.
Okay, we'll move on to citizens' communication. Oh, you're exactly right. I'm sorry, I about shortchanged you.
Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on.
Good evening, council. I'll invite Johnny up to the podium here. Johnny Vollendroff is our new building inspector, and Johnny, would you be willing to give us a few fun facts about yourselves?
Sure. It's first off, it was an honor to see the display for the lieutenant. And I felt I was in the safest room in the whole state of Washington. My father, William, was born in Aberdeen. So I'm not so far abroad, even though I'm kind of wet on my back because I came over the Columbia from Sandy. I live in the city of Sandy. I have extended family here in Washington. There's other Volendroffs if a person would care to dig far enough. And my stepfather actually did a job here at the high school on the ceiling panels to dampen the noise in the gymnasium back in the early 80s, which I helped on. My degree in building inspection technologies was obtained in Northern California in '95. I've twice been a building official, my own jurisdictions. I have nearly 20 years in the trades prior to inspection, mostly as a builder and an electrician. Additionally, nearly 30 years as a code official. I served in Nevada, California, Oregon, and now Washington. My attitude is to serve the public with honor and respect. Since here, my pleasure has been to have met several persons recognized from former jobs we've worked successfully together on in the past and or had similar contacts. My pleasure is in working more rural communities where a personal impact may be made for the better good of all, not impacted by the politics or policies predominant in the larger communities, such as Portland or Vancouver. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to swear here. Working here is a welcoming experience filled with the care and pleasure of a cooperative staff focused on public service. It's my honor to serve here as long as you would need me.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you. And how long is that commute?
It's only 50 minutes. Surprising. I don't have a lot of traffic coming up because everybody's trying to escape. And I don't have a lot of traffic coming down because everybody's trying to get home.
So you're a salmon. You're going against the flow.
I'm going against the flow and it's actually been a wonderful experience.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you, sir. We wish many years here for you.
Well, I'm certainly willing to hang around because it's been a fun experience for me here.
And how long have you been with us now?
I've been here since November the 8th, or excuse me, August the 8th, August the 8th.
A month.
November the 8th. Oh, okay, so I'm getting a little older, but I'm still on board.
I was going to agree with you. So I think that's both of us.
Okay.
Thank you
Yeah.
again.
Well, you know, this is a sign that the dark stuff's growing in anyway, so. All right,
Thank
Well-
you, sir.
thank you, and I'll take my leave.
We'll see you around town.
All right, sir. I look forward to it.
Bye-bye. I believe that.
I'll drive safely.
I believe
I'm
that's.
gonna go up with the escort.
We'll move on to citizens' communications, and the pen wrote very lightly, and we'll start with David. Please, sir, if you'll tell us your name.
Hello, my name is David Gaskin, local Battleground resident. Should I just dive right in?
Go for it.
Okay, perfect. So I am a avid disc golf player. I kind of got hooked, like most of the community, back when COVID began, and started out just kind of hosting events locally for disc golf players. That very quickly grew, and I've had the opportunity to build a disc golf course out at Kiwanis Park, which hopefully everyone saw the signs and the marketing for. So this past Sunday was the kind of grand opening event. We had giveaways. We had cone shaved ice. We had a little competition for some of the youth. And the turnout was amazing. It was so great to see so many younger and older players just coming out and trying to throw for the first time. So I'm just kind of here to introduce myself, and hopefully we'll be talking more over the next few months about kind of growing the sport out here in Battleground. I just live right up the road, so we actually walked to Kiwanis last night. So it's been an amazing opportunity to be able to kind of grow the sport and to have that lasting impact. Initially, I started playing disc golf like 10 years ago when we got our starter set. We played at Leverage Park, which obviously 14, 15-year-old probably shouldn't be down there, on their own. So if we had, a park kind of like Kiwanis where you could go out and practice, you can get better, you can kind of go alone and just kind of do your own thing. Things would be totally different because the sport's grown so much the past few years. So thank you all for having me. A couple honorable mentions, Kim with the City of Battleground. She was incredible to work with. Mark and Todd, they were great to work with. I met with them a couple times. Sam, who we met a couple meetings ago for the park and rec board. Everyone has been so welcoming to the sport. And I'm really excited to see kind of what this can turn into.
So does this make you the commissioner of the Battleground
Disc
Golf.
golf league.
Disc Golf League?
Well, kind of stepped into that unintentionally, but I hope to grow eventually when I have some more time in the evenings. I hope to do like an after school club. I'd love to see the sport grow into schools. I really think that's where we need to focus is on middle schools and high schools, because they're the ones who are really going to be growing the sport, and they're kind of in the perfect coaching age range where they can be coachable and still have their entire lives to play. So
Wonderful. Thanks again.
Cool.
It's a pleasure to have you.
thanks, guys.
Uh-huh.
You just said the mayor was a coach.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I believe we needed to make a motion to approve your mayoral appointment to the Parks and Community Engagement Advisory Board and the Planning Commission.
We had come to a conclusion down the line that wasn't necessary, but we can if you like.
If we don't need to, we don't need to.
We had come to that.
I think there are some of them that require it. Well, we were planning on it did though.
Some do, some don't. Let's just, may I have a motion, please?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment to the Parks and Community Engagement Advisory Board of Chris Brown and the appointment of Casey Olson to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, sir. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none as well. Okay, thank you. The consent agenda.
Do I hear more comments?
Oh, gosh, I'm just wanting to go home, I
Yeah.
guess.
More.
Ms. Murphy, are you here for the sewer presentation at the end of the program, or you're here now, please?
I don't really know why I'm here. Actually, Sam was at my house today. Ryan told me I needed to come here. We've had a lot of issues with our property. I tried to get sewer when they first started building and nobody was able to put it in because it's too deep. Since then, with all the rain, our septic failed. We have all these holes in our backyard, and the city won't approve anybody to do septic, and we cannot find anybody to do sewer. And I've got a few like false, they're like, well, we'll just give you an estimate, but we're not gonna do it. And so Ryan said I needed to come to the meeting tonight to ask for, I'm like nervous, like.
Why
I
so
guess it's
nervous?
The podium thing, I feel like I'm gonna
We're,
pass out.
we're talking about sewer.
Talk about-
It's okay.
So, the rules, like Ryan keeps saying, the regulations are if you're 600 feet from sewer, you have to have sewer. Which they're building a subdivision and we live on Grace across from our house, but the rule also states an owner of a single family residence whose on-site septic system has failed and is required to connect a public sewage system because of this code can appeal this requirement to the city council, provided they meet the applicable requirements of RC, meet the law. 35.21.940. And apparently we meet that, which is so ironic because I wanted sewer, but now, I mean, I don't have an extra $100,000 to put a sewer in. If we could even find somebody to do it. So the health department has told us we have till September 15th. The Corey McNair, our engineer, says by October 1st, but yet he keeps getting denied a permit. So there's like, I have all these holes. I can't even have my grandchildren over because my backyard's torn up because of.
Don't
and
lose
I
them
have
in a septic hole.
I have a failing septic, and so when the rains come, the poop's probably gonna end up in my yard, so this is kind of urgent, so I just need somebody to tell Ryan apparently to give the permits.
Well, is it septic, Sam, the health department's purview? Mark, are you the septic guy?
Yeah, so what the city's code said is that if you're within 600 feet of a sewer system, you have to connect. Like Sharon mentioned, there's an RCW that gives council, or if you've set it up with a hearings examiner, the authority to waive that requirement if certain conditions are met. And so RCW talks about cost, if there's any impact to the environment, and there's a list of things that would need to be met. And then when all of that is presented, you could decide if you're willing to waive the requirement or stick to what the city's
Are you
code
familiar
says.
where she lives?
I know where she lives. Yeah.
Is she within 600 feet,
Yes.
500 feet?
I think it's 10 feet. You know, it's literally right out in front of the.
What's the address?
It's 3415 Southeast Grace, and what Rachi has told me is they had a lot of trouble. It's like the water tables are so full there, they had to go 20 feet deep. And it just, when you dig, it just explodes with water. So that's why no sewer company will take it, because I think, I don't know, even the next adjacent subdivision, Rachi refused the job, which would go right in front of my house to do sewer. I think Clark County Paving and Excavating may take the job. But the reason nobody will do, I mean, even if I had the extreme money, nobody will take on the job. So the fact that I keep getting denied and I have nothing, the septic failed because of the water tables. Our yard kind of flooded and it like disintegrated the septic. So it's just been an ongoing year of problems and nobody seems to be able to help me, and I'm like freaking out.
So,
basically.
so the code mentioned hearings examiner.
So if the city has the ability to either council do it or assign it to a hearings examiner.
Well, when is Mr. Turner next coming?
Oh. Assign as a decision or as a policy?
We don't have a meeting scheduled yet. I know Mr. Turner's going to be out on vacation a good chunk of September, so
This
I-
is time sensitive.
I'd need to, I'd kind of need to look at his calendar.
Well,
We could,
the problem is there are 7 people here who don't understand your problem
I have like,
or the solution to your problem.
I know the solution. Say yes, let me get the dang septic on. There's not poop all over my yard.
Who's
my
going
house,
out to
my
look
home.
at it?
That would be a septic designer. So the city doesn't look
None of the
at,
city is stepping.
no, we don't look at septic. We're in the sewer business,
So
not
she just
septic.
wants a permit, right? Just a permit.
We
got
were
to
denied.
have-
Yeah, so what has to happen because she's within the 600 feet, that I think it's public health or the county health district would approve it, but they need sign off from the city in order to do it because it's within the city limits. Because they're within the 600 feet by code, we can't do that sign off without the waiver process.
So what's that process, Ms. Erdman?
I'm reading it now. This is the first I've heard of this.
I have
You
all
have the
the,
RCW.
and I have all the requirements to get the, like, proof that it's impossible. And the health department apparently is gonna find me on September 15th for having a failing septic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sharon, was this part of the problem with the water under the house?
Yes.
And where is?
Well, no, this
exact-
is,
where-
they said the water, sorry, Shane, but Mr. Mayor.
No, no, I'm trying to figure out exactly where you live.
She
I
lives
live-
just before you go over the hill by the golf course on Grace. just before you go down over the hill, they're building all the new homes
On the
west
right
side.
hand side.
Yeah, she's on.
You're on the
west
left hand side
side. Yeah,
there.
and that is city. It is city,
It was annexed into.
right on the edge of. But it's just down Grace. It's a single house off to the left there.
Yeah, that's where the new subdivision is. That's just north of there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, now that I know where you live.
That's
So,
what-
so what do you think?
It appears that you can do an administrative appeal process through the RCW as long as it meets some requirement. One, is it cost prohibitive to require the property owner to connect to public sewer? Is there a public health or environmental consideration related to allowing them to continue on septic? There are public sewer system or financial considerations related to allowing the property owner to repair and replace the on-site system. And again, financial considerations for any potential latecomer agreements. So I think the best thing would be to have you file an official appeal to that decision, so then we can get it in front of council or the hearings examiner, whichever path you would like to take.
But she has till September 15th. We won't meet before
We
then.
won't meet before then. We'd have
So
to call a special meeting.
Here's what we're gonna do, Sharon. It's your day. You're going to hand whatever you have to Mark. If you'll have a seat, we're going to lay you at the end of the meeting. We're gonna let Mark look at it, see if you meet the RCW along with Ms. Erdman. And at that point, I believe we might just stand up and take care of it.
Thank you.
Or at least we'll talk about it.
All right,
Is it worth that?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've never been to one of our meetings before, so.
Do we need to amend the agenda to do that? I think so.
Yes, okay, so,
I'll make a motion
Thank you.
to amend the agenda to add Sharon Murphy's situation to the end of it.
Yeah, before they're closed.
it will be right before
Right.
the administrative reports.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none as well. Hang out with us. Okay. Mr. Lynn, I see you here, but we're going to bring you, sir, when we start talking about your annexation proposal. Okey doke, perfect. Anyone else? Seeing none, we're going to move forward. That's okay. Consent agenda. Does any member?
I think we
I
already
believe-
approved that, didn't we? Oh.
No.
No, they stopped me before.
Motion to approve.
Well, let me
The-
finish the
Sorry.
statement. Let
She's
me-
trying to get you home. You said you wanted to go home.
let me finish the statement. Does any council member believe that any item needs to be withdrawn from the consent agenda?
Already got a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none as well. We're moving on. Ms. Erdman, it's your turn now. We're moving on to resolution 22-10, the Senior Activities Reimbursement Program.
Thank you.
Yes,
Turn
ma'am.
this over to our Finance and Information Services Director, Ms. Lau.
Good evening, council. Before you is a resolution amending our senior activity reimbursement program, moving it from the allotment that we originally set a year ago of $8,000 to make it a yearly allotment of $8,000. And I'm here if you have any questions.
So it just rolls. It just rolls on.
Correct.
And it only has to do with business that they're conducting in the city and city facilities.
Correct. It'd be the same program.
Same. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Lowry? Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve resolution 22-10, the Senior Activities Reimbursement Program.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Thank you, ma'am. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Moving on. Ordinance number 22-06, the West Main Commons Development Agreement. Ms. Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Yes, we looked at this back in July. The actual DA was approved in June, during the second presentation, June 21st, and this was to allow the development or grant the development the ability to do residential housing on the ground floor in the back portion of the development. So we kind of went through that process. As we were working through that, the developer Deacon Development decided they wanted to try to access the MFTE program provided by the state. We brought that back forward to council on July 18th. And there was a vote to have them work with staff to add that language into the DA before it got adopted. So we've been working back and forth with our attorneys and their attorneys as well to make sure that that language is sufficient. So that has been added to the DA that you originally looked at, as well as some additional information that grants, that it reiterates that they have to get SEPA approval before any of this is actually official. So we are basically, by approving this development agreement, saying that we agree that this is the path we want to go down. Also recognizing that we still have to go through the environmental pieces to make sure that the changes that we have made through the development code don't have the environmental impacts. So that's all included in this development agreement that is now in front of you for consideration. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Aaron, I assume that since it's gone through this process, staff is comfortable with what is in the language that's in there?
Yes, so and especially with the MFTE language, the way it's written is that we will be coming back to you with the ordinance that would establish the program as a whole. We didn't want to go through the process of pulling that all together until you agreed that this is the path we wanted to go down. And then we'll bring back the ordinances that will create that program, and that will be coming next.
Okay, so this is like a
Yeah.
second step of many steps.
Exactly.
basically. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve or to adopt ordinance 22-06 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll continue on with Ms. Davis.
I have a question about in the terms, number 8 in there, it talks about a period of 5 years. And it says at a point, it may be developed in more than one phase. And I just didn't know if this was the time or when it comes back for clarification of if they choose, if, for instance, if they choose to do the phase, let's say the residential first, and after 4 years or whatever happens, the commercial part falls apart. Well, that's where we're supposed to be getting our sales tax from, and then we give them the multifamily. So I'm trying to figure out, do we protect ourselves by saying that when you say phase, could you be more specific? And is it in conjunction with us not losing out our part? Am I making myself clear? And is this an okay time to ask that?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. We didn't take that into consideration. That's a great point to raise. Because they have not submitted their actual development application, we haven't seen if they're planning on phasing it. During our discussions, they didn't indicate a phase plan, but that is definitely something that council may want to consider to ensure that we get the commercial piece. I know our attorney did look at this section because it was very vague on the phasing piece, and so he added the 5 years so that we would have an out, because if it was submitted as a phase project, that could go in perpetuity for, well, at least until the preliminary approval, sorry. So that might be something that we want to definitely clarify in this development agreement.
In this or the one that's coming?
So
After
this is
this.
in front of you tonight for adoption, so we could make that clarification and approve it, or we could bring it back for approval and make those changes.
Which do you prefer?
That's up to you guys.
What makes it easier for staff?
And so I guess I would ask with that, we would need some direction on what path you would want to go. Do we want to say that it cannot be phased, that if phased, the commercial has to come first? I mean, those would be things that you guys would need to clarify to add that.
Okay. What's the pleasure? Yes, sir.
I mean, I myself would like the commercial to come first. And I mean, when you look at this, if the residential. Even with the residential, I mean, if the residential's last. You could be sitting out 13 years. Total with no taxes on that. 5 years, you'll tax whatever property's there once they build the units, but I like the residential, I mean, the commercial to be done. I would like it to be done as a project, but you know, that the challenge with that is I'm not a developer, but stayed at a Holiday Inn, and you know, I've seen where when we have commercial property that's hot, we'll develop commercial property first. When we have residential property that's hot, that's the first thing that's gonna be developed, and then commercial will sit. Or we won't develop it because commercial property is not hot right now. We don't want to spend the money to develop it. And that's kind of the advantage of the developers agreement is we can set those parameters. And I think you bring up a good point, Ms. Davis, and it has happened to us in the past with developers agreements where we have one intention that we want, but it's not the developers agreement and it gets taken a different way. And then we're sitting here going, why didn't that happen? And they use our own developers agreement against us and beat us over the head with it. So I think I like developers agreements, but I think we need to be very specific in what we want in that project if we're going to do a developers agreement.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think, we may or may not be getting into the weeds on what the developer plans on moving forward. I'm wondering if it'd be appropriate of having the developer come up and perhaps provide some context into this discussion.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we really haven't discussed phasing with the developer. I know they are in the audience if you'd
Yeah,
like. to
so
have them-
if you- yeah,
Come up,
Mr.
gentlemen.
Mayor.
What's the plan?
So the reason that we wrote it this way, it is a little bit vague, but so much of commercial development depends upon leasing. And we like to have a project about 50% leased before we proceed with a commercial portion. Residential, multifamily, of course, you can't do that because no one's going to pre-lease it with you. But we've got about 36,000 square feet of commercial planned. We would love to build it all as one because it's more cost effective to do that. So it's in our best interest to do it as one. But we also don't want to build it if we don't have very many parties ready to go into it. So that's the reason that we allowed some flexibility because we haven't been able to really market. We've done a soft marketing, but we haven't been able to really market it full-fledged until we come to an agreement here. And so it's purposely a little bit vague, but not to try to harm anybody. It actually harms us if we have to delay it. It may disappoint you, but it monetarily harms us. So we want to do it all at once. We just have to make sure we can get some leases in place for the commercial.
And that process that you just described, is that pretty much an industry standard that most of your developers do on a project similar to yours?
I wouldn't say the phasing part, but the commercial, yes, it's
That's what I was referring to. the
yeah,
commercial
nobody
aspect.
specs commercial. When I say spec, I mean build it and they'll come concept.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say any developer.
Yeah, that was.
Most developers want to know that there's gonna be some solid interest before they break ground and start spending the money. We have had preliminary interest, I can tell you that. So that part's good. But we haven't been able to actually sign a lease or anything like that because we just had to get, the first steps done.
Yeah. And I think council I'll end on this, but yes, every developer's agreement is slightly different based upon the very unique project and the aspects of the project. And so while there may have been some other development agreements that may not have ended the way we had initially intended, but they were specific to that particular project, doesn't necessarily mean that what happened there is going to repeat itself over and over again. And like he said, there is no spec building on commercial, so they don't just build out a commercial and hope that they're going to fill it. They're actively trying to get tenants as they go. We saw that with some of our rather large developments when we built out Scott and Way. I mean, they didn't just build a big building for what is now Walmart and hope that Walmart signed the lease on it. They actually acquired that lease and then they built it out. So I don't see anything that's unnormal in what is being proposed here.
Oh, I can tell you that, well, we will spec part of the property. We want to be about 50% leased, but we would be doing this exactly the same whether we had a development agreement with a city or not, whether we had residential planned or not. This approach that we're using for the commercial is exactly how we do every commercial project that we develop. Is we just need to make sure there is some interest before we plunge forward. I will tell you historically, Pete's the guy that puts the deals together. He's the one sitting back there. And he has a good knack of finding properties and opportunities that work. So we haven't yet signed up a piece of property that we didn't develop. So I would be pretty shocked if this didn't move right along. But you know, you just can't guarantee it. You just have to get the people interested.
Yes.
If I recall, some of this commercial is bottom floor of the residential, so obviously that would be coming in right away, correct? With our right away with the residential, that's part and parcel.
Yeah.
And then I would, I think it's a great point that Councilmember Davis brought up, but the corollary to that is that if we would put something in development agreement that would force a developer to build commercial and nobody rents it, would you, I mean, do you want empty buildings?
Well, I think I would, I don't want
And
this.
I'm just using an extreme example of the opposite
Yeah.
scenario. And I feel uncomfortable getting inside another business's expertise. So that's my concern on putting some sort of requirement that you must build this. And what does that look like if they don't have a tenant? That's going to look different than if we wait, or if they wait, sorry, and have a tenant and can build it how they wish and how it's designed. So that's my concern of us trying to insert ourselves in the middle of this. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that comment, and I don't want this to come across wrong, so we'll see how this goes. If you told us, okay, you have to guarantee you're going to do the commercial either before or with the residential, we'd probably have to pass. Because I can't guarantee that. We just need a little bit of flexibility. We want to do it that way. We know the residential, whenever you do residential, you're taking a big chance because you don't pre-lease any of it. But we do our studies and have talked to people and feel confident that the apartments will be successful. And on the commercial, we've done a lot of research on it too, but we just haven't gotten to the point we can sign leases yet because we have to have other things in place first. So I appreciate your comment, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I do appreciate that philosophy because that is how we look at it, that we just have to make sure that our commercial developments these days are really tough. If I was up here 7 years ago, it'd probably be a little bit different, or 5 years ago. As you know, retail right now is really difficult. So we're even more cautious than we were 5 years ago. But even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, Pete and I would always do it the same. We'd make sure there was interest before we broke ground and built it, even though we want to combine the two and go forward with them all at once.
The problem is that as a city, for at least the 10 and a half, almost 11 years I've been here, we've been on the back end of the trust wagon. We listened to Mr. Reagan way back when he said we trust but verify. But by the time we got to the verification stage, as Mr. Bowman stated, we were beat over the head with our own document. And so trust runs thin in city business for some reason. I understand your problem. I understand Ms. Davis's statement as well. I somewhat concur with her as well for the exact reason of, we saw a picture one time. It was a really nice looking thing. It never showed. What we got was, oh my God, what happened to the nice picture and the trees and everything else? Never came. And so
we'll put the ordinance up for a vote and as it stands, unless anyone wants to make an amendment to it. We'll put the ordinance up as it stands. We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Cody on that. Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Just one thing to clarify too, this may help alleviate that. So this development agreement is approving residential on the ground floor of specific buildings. So it's not giving them a blanket to do that across the site. We have indicated that, you know, anything that's fronting Main or that street that comes through on Southwood First has to be commercial. So that does save, even depending on the phasing or not, if commercial doesn't come in under this development agreement, for example, if it were to expire, that is still zone regional commercial. So that wouldn't get developed as residential development, even with this DA in place. So I just want to clarify that. That kind of helps alleviate some of the concerns I think you guys are having.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Ms. Erdman. The one thing, I mean, I want to know who we hold accountable when we put through a developer's agreement and we miss a comma and it ends up being 300 units of apartments. And this is what Mr. Mayor and I and Mr. Cortez have been on council for multiples of these, and that's what happened to us. And so when you miss a comma, when we're depending on, when we go bond a road that's based upon tax revenue out of a development that has commercial property, and we get promised things, I will say, you haven't promised us anything yet as far as I'm going to give you 1,000 jobs. I'm going to get, thank you. But I want to know that our attorney has looked at every single bit that 4 years from now, 5 years from now, when the commercial property hasn't moved and there's a comma that wasn't put in here and they go, you know what? Apartments, I have not seen apartments yet built in this town that are not rented out, period. I haven't seen housing that has been built in this town that isn't rented out or lived in. I've seen a lot of commercial property. You can go to the Village, it's been there for 14 years and there's still vacant commercial property. So my concern is there a comma? And if it's missing, who are we suing? Because we always come in on the short end of the stick on it. And when we set these things up, it seems to me that developers have really good attorneys. We have average, when we're looking at contracts. And that's my only concern. I get what you're doing, and I get the last thing you want to do is build 100,000 square feet of commercial space and no one rents it. That's what happened in the Village. That's why businesses went out of business. That's why they lost them. Banks owned them, everything else. That isn't good for the city either. And this one is more visible than the Village is. So I agree with that, but I want to make sure that we're not missing a comma somewhere and that this has been fully vetted multiple times, and then we'll take a chance, or at least I will. But we've been hammered on missing pieces in the past.
I can tell you that Mr. Harper went through this multiple times. He went through it when we brought it forward to council the first time, and then the second time after adding the MFT language and talking through some things. And he's been doing these for a very long time. He went through it with a fine tooth comb. He brought up things that we as a city had never actually even thought about in development agreements before, that we worked through with Deacon's attorneys as well. So, I still can't guarantee that every comma is in the right place, but I can tell you that he did go through it very thoroughly and brought up more things than I had thought about in the past with these as well. So I feel confident on the legal review at this point.
Okey-dokey. Okay. Anyone else? Hearing none, seeing none. Ms. Cody, please.
Mayor.
Oh, if you'll read the ordinance by title first. Thank you.
An ordinance adopting a development agreement between the City of Battle Ground and Beacon Development LLC. Councilmember Davis? No. Councilmember Cortez?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor DeRozers?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Bowman?
Yes.
Councilmember McCoy?
Yes.
Councilmember Walters?
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. And when will we see this again? Any ideas?
You've approved it. So now the next steps, we'll start drafting the MFTE program and bring that forward as a separate ordinance.
Sometime in October?
Yes, probably.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to have you. Moving on to ordinance number 22-07, the Hanson annexation, Ms. Urban.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. I'm going to turn it over to Community Development Director, Mr. Crummett.
Good evening, council. This is the last stage of the annexation process for Mr. Howard Hanson. I don't see him in the audience this evening.
He's not here.
Invite him, but again, this is more the procedural end. The council's held the public hearing on August 1st. They've crossed the Ts, dotted the Is, and all the requirements needed to get this to ordinance stage. So the ordinance is before you, and I'd recommend approval.
Any questions of Sam? Is there a motion?
Move to adopt ordinance 2207, the Hanson annexation. as
Second.
presented.
Thank you.
Have a read it.
Thank you, sir. And then Ms. Cody, please. Are there any other questions? Are there any questions? Hearing none, seeing none. Ms. Cody, please, the ordinance.
An ordinance of the city of Battle Ground, Washington, providing for the annexation of certain real property known as the Hanson annexation, subject to assumption of indebtedness and adopting pre-annexation zoning controls for such property.
Thank you. If you'll do another roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis? No. Councilmember Cortez?
Yes.
Councilmember DeRozier's? Yes. Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Bowman?
Yes.
Councilmember McCoy?
Yes.
Councilmember Walters?
No.
Motion carries.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Moving on to the Lynn annexation, Ms. Urban.
And again, I'm going to give this over to Community Development Director. Mr. Crummett.
Okay.
Mayor Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Bowman.
Yes.
Your YouTube channel playing.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Are we back now? We're back. Okay, Sam,
Good to go.
let's roll.
Now we know how much of a delay there is.
About 8 seconds.
That's for language delay.
Okay, another annexation before you. This is the Lynn annexation. This is really the first steps in the process, which are to have a meeting with the applicant. James Lynn is in attendance. The property is on Tukes Mountain. This is a property approximately 1.5 acres. Mr. Lynn's requesting to annex. The decision that needs to be made by the council this evening is whether to accept the boundary as drawn, to reject it, or to modify the boundary. There's been some history of annexations in this area directly to the west. That parcel was annexed, the Grace annexation, I think a couple of years ago, and then the Thorpe annexation was kind of brought into the city too in this area. So staff is recommending approval. If you want to get more into the history of the water system up there and some of the discussions we've had with neighbors, we can do that. But at least
Mr. Lynn, please, sir.
invite Mr. Lynn to the podium if you have any
Please.
questions for him as well.
Is there anything we should know before we start discussing this, Mr. Lynn?
No, it's pretty straightforward. I've known Sam for about 8 years. We had a annex try about 8 years ago, and we got it through to the final letter, which your council sent to have endorsed by our president, and he refused to do that. And he's still our president, so I'm having to work around and asking for annexation for myself. And two properties which are next to mine have recently been annexed, and one is on the back side of the property, one's on the west side of the property. Fairly straightforward. What prompted me to get back involved again was a conversation on the Hill about upgrading our system. I know the system backwards and forwards, and it's a broken system, unfortunately. And to throw more money at it is ridiculous. And so I took the formal step of asking for annexation as a result of that. Some of the problems are the reservoir itself has major leaks. You can go up, the reservoir happens to sit right across the street from where I live. But the rebar that is inside the reservoir has been exposed by the water. And the concrete is slowly crumbling away. We had a outfit come in a long time, well, over 8 years ago, to caulk the seams and so forth. And one afternoon, I talking with one of the workers, and he was telling me that he took a tube of caulk about this big around, this long, and he put two of those tubes in one crack into the reservoir. He says, I could have put more, but I didn't want to blow the side out. And that was 8 years ago. It hasn't gotten any better. You can go up there. It looks like a pinto pony where the leaks have come through the side of the reservoir. What happens is the rebar degrades, and once it gets to the air, it turns into iron oxide, which then colors the concrete. So as I say, it looks like a pinto pony, very unattractive. But the big thing is it's dangerous. You know, you have, I forget the exact gallonage, I think it's like 50,000 gallons or something. If that were to blow out the side of the reservoir and go down, I happen to live very near the top, and the reservoir is right across the street from me. So most of our housing is below me and the reservoir. They would be in serious trouble if that were to break. There's other problems. The piping system is PVC, put in, I think, 25 years ago. And it's slowly degrading. The joints were not properly made, and we would typically have 3 to 4 leaks a year, and it's quite a process to find the leak, and it's a little expensive as well. So that's another one of the reasons why I'm interested. I don't want to be throwing money at a failed system, and the pumps would be another item. We have 2 pressure pumps which feed the housing. They're lead lag. They've been, it's at least 15 years since they were purchased. So they're on their last legs, and it represents another cost that will be coming up shortly that I don't wish to participate in. And the well pump, we have a very deep well. The well goes down about 600 feet, and the well pump is at the end of that 600 feet. And it is slowly losing its capacity to keep up. It operates probably 85% of the time. And there's, in a year's time, there's probably 15 times when our red light comes on, which means that the water level has dropped below a certain level. And at that point, that little well pump has to run 100% of the time. And it's been around for over 15 years as well. So those are costs I don't want to participate in. And that's why I'm here.
We appreciate you coming. If you'll hang tight for a bit in case someone has a question for you, and then we'll move on. We'll start with Mr. Cortez, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm always delighted to see somebody eager to come into the city. So obviously, I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. However, I do have a quick question, and maybe Sam or Aaron can answer this. I don't remember when this happened, but I remember vaguely, and maybe some of my council members can help me out here. I remember vaguely that your homeowners association was in here at some point in the past 5 to 6 years, I don't know. And it was pretty passionate, and there were threats of suing and this and that. Am I remembering the correct?
No, you're correct.
You're right.
Yeah. We had 2 lawsuits that were processed, not for the water situation, but for trees.
Okay.
Uh,
So there's no pending litigation currently, correct?
I don't think, I think they've been settled. The homeowners won both of the suits, and unfortunately, in my opinion, the bylaws of the homeowners associations, specifically states that if somebody blocks the view of another tenant, then he can ask for those trees or whatever's blocking it be removed. That apparently wasn't good enough for the judge, and he voted in favor of the homeowner who wanted to keep his trees. And so it was very upsetting for a lot of the people. We have 19 houses in our development, and I would say that it was pretty evenly split about those that were supporting the homeowners and those that are supporting the tree situation and those that were against it.
So there was no litigation in regards to the water system that you all are
No,
on?
it's totally separate situation, but unfortunately, those same groups of people are on one side of the water situation. And the other side is the group that wanted the trees cut down,
Okay.
which is one I'm on. Yeah.
Okay.
But I was the secretary of the association back in those days, and got completely disgusted with what was happening. And this is my first foray back into the political dealings.
Okay, thank you. Sam, he was discussing the water system and looks from the sounds of it, the deficiencies that are there. What if we move forward and everything went through and he comes into the city, what is the city's responsibility at that point to what he's talked about in terms of the deficiencies?
It's a private water system, so the city doesn't own or have any responsibility for that water system. Mr. Lynn would probably request to be connected to our city water system, and we could direct him on an appropriate connection.
But that usually is paid for by the property owner, or how does that work?
Correct. Mr. Lynn would have to pay a water connection fee.
Connection fee. Okay.
Did the neighbor just do all that? The annex?
Mr. Grace,
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Grace connected.
he connected?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
yes. sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to move forward on the 10% petition and to accept that. And then direct staff to move forward with the 60% petition for annexation.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, sir. Yes. sir.
Mr. Lynn, there's 19 properties. 2 of them have come into the city already, correct?
I have a hearing problem.
There's 19 properties and 2 of them have come into the city already. You would be the
Yes,
third.
that's correct. And they've been approved.
Yeah. So the question I have is, we were here when they came in needing water, and out of my concern is out of the remaining 16, what, in your estimation, what is the percentage of them that want nothing to do with the city? They want an antiquated water system, and those that do, because I do know one family up there that would love to come into the city, but the
Who's
Bennett's.
that? What is the percentage
Yeah.
split there? It's kind of hard to say. We've had a lot of deaths.
Yeah.
Probably the water, I imagine. No, there's been like 4 or 5 deaths, in the last 8 years. So that split is probably not as strong as it was previously when we were dealing in trees. I haven't gone around and canvassed the people, and frankly, I seldom ever talk to anybody in our homeowners group. My friends all died. So,
Well, I think that like my only concern is we obviously have 3 of you that have come in that
yeah,
value the city and what the city can bring to you. And we're losing more and more votes in that neighborhood. That we're just going to have this island of people that hate the city, want to stay on their water system, versus those that want to come into the city. And maybe this is something that we as the city need to do, is reach out to them again and contact them and see if there is more support now to come in, to annex in. I don't have a problem doing, I mean, this is property rights, right? This goes back to, you have the right to develop your property. You have the right to come and ask the city to take you into the city.
right.
And we should, this shouldn't be an issue, because that's your right to develop your property. You're not infringing upon them. And so I love that you're doing this. I would love it a lot better if you guys didn't have to do this one by one, and we could grab it all.
Yeah, I think your annexation process requires that at least one property has to be adjacent to
Yes, to the city. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well-
So it really messes up some of the ones that are up on the east end there right now.
Well, the 3 properties, the 2 that have been approved and myself, the 2 that have been approved are on 2 sides of my house.
Yeah. Yeah.
The 3rd side is an open field.
Yep.
And
Who owns the open field?
it's owned by Elizabeth Taylor,
Is
not the movie star.
Yeah.
She drank the water and is gone.
So it's just an open field. It's never been.
Never been, a house hasn't been put on it. They have no plans to put a house on it. In fact, the other day I was going by in my gator and I spotted a sign in front of her and in front of the empty lot. And she happened to be out in the field there. And I says, "Well, you selling, or what's the sign all about?" And she says, "No, I'm not selling." And I says, "Well, if you were selling, what would you sell it for?" And she says, $1.2 million. Yeah. I says, no, you're off about 50,000 on that one. No.
Well, I'm wondering, when I look at that is why, we could pull that lot too fairly easily with your annexation, because you'll have the 10% and the 60%. That lot's worth very little compared to a lot with a house on it. And we could start to grab, and kind of pick that up.
Yeah, well, two of the deaths are above me, and I'm probably the third house. Elizabeth Taylor and myself and one other person is up on that end. And I can tell you that Elizabeth was a no-show on the vote of trees. We are friendly, however, and the other two are probably would be supportive of myself. So
Would they be supportive coming in to the city? If we were to annex, instead of just annexing you, grab 2 or 3 other properties there and annex all the way across that top there, would they be supportive of that?
have no idea. I don't know. There's a fair fee to for your meter,
Yeah.
$4,000, I think it is. And if you then get go for putting piping in from the city system, you're looking at another 10 to 15,000
Gonna be a fair
to do
fee
that
replace that water.
per each house.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking, because if they come in, those other 3 lots, if they come in, they don't have to, you're coming in because you want water.
Sure.
They could come in and never hook to the water. They could just come into the city and we can start to, if we've got people up there that are having issues, we can start to get people that want to come into the city and have the ability to hook into that in the future.
Yeah.
And it may be worth, and I don't know if that's, we direct you to go back to them, or if the staff can reach out to them and say, hey, we're looking at this annexation. I know we've done that in the past, where I think 92nd was one that we really worked on and pushed out to people. Hey, we're looking at this annexation of the Lynn property. Do you guys have any interest in coming into the city along with them and bring 3 or 4 of you up there, and maybe, soon enough, they'll go, it's time for us to turn over our water.
Well, with the turnover of, the people that have recently died, it's hard to say, what, how that would poll, Anyway, it would not be good for me, though, I'm sure, for you to be bringing in more people to have a conversation with. So I wouldn't be
Well,
too
I think
favorable.
that what Councilmember is saying is the economies of scale. There's an annexation fee of coming in. There's also the disturbing and putting in potentially city water. I don't know who we direct, if it's staff or the petitioner, to at least make contact. If they're interested, add them to the annexation. If they're not, don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I suspect that most of them are not fully aware of the problems that they're faced with. If that reservoir,
It's gonna be expensive.
well, they've talked about putting a bladder in. But that doesn't reinforce the sides. And that side could still blow out. And if the side blows out, you're looking at heavy duty trouble. Because there's the majority of those houses are below that reservoir. So
Who do we direct on that?
not a pretty sight.
I just wanted to say that I'm fine with moving forward with his property. He's done what he needs to. I don't want to have to make him recruit neighbors or anything. So I'd just like to move forward as is.
Anyone else? I do remember the conversation from some years ago. Your neighbors weren't very friendly to us. I remember that.
Yeah,
And as far as I'm concerned, their thirst does not bother me at all.
yeah.
So, Mr. Lynn, we'll go ahead and we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Is there any other conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. We're starting.
Okay, thank you very
sir.
much. I can leave, right?
We'll
Thanks.
talk,
We'll
we'll
be in
talk
touch.
about you after you're gone. Moving on to the interim pump station policy.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll turn this over to our Public Works Director, Mr. Hussein.
Good evening, council. Give me 1 minute to share my presentation. There we go. All right, so tonight I'm going to present the interim pump station policy. The agenda for the presentation is what is it? How does it work? What happens after approval? What the next steps are, and then any questions or discussion. So what is it? It's a city policy that would be related to the city sanitary sewer system. It essentially allows for an interim or temporary pump station to be constructed when constructing the permanent system is not possible. I will say we modeled this off of Clark Regional's policy. They have a similar one for this situation. We made a few changes, which I'll mention as we go along. How does it work? So the applicant would need to request that City Council approve the interim pump station. Applicant would need to show that they offered fair market value for any required easements. If the applicant doesn't get some of those easements, even if they're not able to get all of them, they would have to dedicate those to the city. And if the connection to the existing system does not require easements, then this policy can't be used. This is a little different than Clark Regional. So Clark Regional also has a cost element in it. We didn't want to go that direction because we ultimately want the applicant to build the city system per the sewer plan. They have a little bit wider area that they deal with, so it might make more sense from a financial perspective to do it. Since we're limited to the city, it made sense that we would leave out the cost perspective. So I have an example here, and I want to point out it is a made-up example. There is no development happening on any of these properties. It just fit the situation, so I used them. So in this example, A is the developer, B is a willing participant, and then C is the person that doesn't want to give up the easement. So in this case, the city sewer system is to the north. The developer would go and try to get easements from the two properties. In this case, the owner of C doesn't want to provide it. So the interim pump station policy could come into effect. So you can see that using what B would provide and then city right of way, you could make the development work and be able to do it that way. So that's kind of what the policy is getting at. In this case, since B was a willing person, they would have to provide the easement for that piece of it. And then in the future, if C ever developed, you'd be able to connect the system and then get rid of the pump station. What happens after approval? So pump station will need to be located on a portion of land within the development. If it's on buildable lots, then there's a partial fee waiver as an option. If not, then they would have to pay the full fee. There's no construction on these lots until the permanent line is constructed, the pump station abandoned, and the easement has been terminated by the city. There's two fees that the developer pays. The part one is 2 years of maintenance fees. So in Clark Regionals, they have it set at $10,000 for each year. I'm proposing to put ours in the fee schedule so we can look at that every year and make sure that the costs are accurate. The second part of that is decommissioning costs. Again, I believe Clark Regional has $10,000 in theirs. I would put it in the fee schedule that it would be based on the situation. So rather than a set fee, it would be based on actual construction costs. The waiver part of that is having an option to do an MOU where the developer actually goes through the process of abandoning the pump station and doing all of that. So if you pay the fee, that would put it on the city to ultimately go do that construction when the time was right. With this option, it allows where you don't have to pay that abandonment fee, but you would have to sign something that says when everything's in place, you would go through and do it. The benefit to the developer is they have lots that are sitting there they can't build on because the pump station is taking that up. So there's some incentive for them to actually do that, plus the MOU. The next steps, if council's interested in this, we would go through legal review. Like I said, it was based off Clark Regional, so it generally should be in compliance, but we would want to spend the money to have legal review it. And then it would come back as a resolution to adopt. So I am happy to answer any questions, and biggest question for me, is this something that council would be interested in? If you want us to move forward?
Let me start then is there a development currently running this in the city?
We don't have this in place, so there isn't. There is a proposed development that this would be applicable to. So that's what kind of drove this. I've had this in my long-term plan to bring to council for a while. It just hasn't been high priority, but because the situation has popped up, it kind of pushed it to the front of the line.
Then my other question would be, if you go back to your A, B, and C thing there. Obviously C is the obstinate one in this position.
Correct.
Is the green line, does the sewer belong to the city? Who does this sewer belong to in C?
So the dash line would be the permanent setup, and that's a city sewer. The dotted line is the temporary pump station, and that would also belong to the city. That's why they pay that fee of the 10,000 and the 10,000, because we would be the ones required to maintain it.
So my question would be then, in the future, or why haven't we in the past, if you have city sewer running through your property, then the connection should just be automatic at that point, should be written in any agreement we have with anyone that's on the city sewer.
So
I'm trying to figure out why C can put up a stink. No pun intended.
Correct. The dash line isn't there. So that's what would need to be built to build our system. So in my example, there's no sewer on C and there's no sewer on B. The dash line is the line they would have to be built per the sewer plan.
Okay.
And C is the one that's preventing it from happening.
So
you're correct. If it existed and was a public sewer, then they'd have the right to connect. to it.
Problem.
Yeah, we would have easements in place.
So does the city could tell C, you help us now or we don't help you later?
Yeah, essentially.
So the city could end up being the bad guy in the heavy, not the bad guy, could be the heavy in this sense. When C comes to us and wants sewer, no can do. Couldn't help us, can't help you.
Well, if C came in, they would build the city system and then it would eliminate the temporary pump station.
And how big is this temporary pump station?
It would be sized to serve the development. So it's going to be variable depending on if we're talking about a 200 lot or a, commercial development.
So it's not on wheels. It's an actual.
Yeah, it meets all
building connection.
It meets all of our pump station standards, so we can maintain it appropriately and everything. But the plan for it is ultimately to remove it when the time comes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
What's the alternative? Say you didn't have this policy in place and this scenario came up. What would that look like? I mean, I could think of three. So one, you just continue to say you need to figure it out with your neighbor, whatever that may be. Two, the development just doesn't happen. There's no way for them to move forward. So it sits until something changes. Three, nothing in this policy eliminates council's eminent domain powers or anything like that. So you could always say, say we have a commercial project, lots of benefit to the city. Somebody's doing that. You can use eminent domain powers to say, we're going to go get the easement for you and deal with it that way. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I like it because number one, we as a council are divided on all kinds of things. I don't see a council ever saying, yeah, let's go eminent domain something. You know, we just would never do that. And so I think it gives an opportunity for a workaround without having, and I think of some of the projects that we've had or some of the properties that we've had, you know, I brought this up 2 meetings ago, I think, of people that just hate the city, that are right on the city. No, you're not gonna develop here until they die and their kids want their money, and then they want to develop everything. And so I think this gives us a workaround until you can get through, you know, those properties that don't want to work with anyone. And there's a lot of people that just aren't around here. You know, it takes a lot of work to get in contact with who's in, and it took us a year to get in contact with Safeway, and we knew who they were. So, I mean, this is just a workaround to stop development from being held up. And so I think it's a great idea.
And just to add to that, Clark Regionals is kind of automatic. Their board still has to approve it, but it's, you know, if you have this, you do it. In this case, the way we set it up is, you know, the developer does have to do some work. They have to go attempt to get those easements. They have to make an honest effort for it. And then if they're being held up and it's totally outside of their control, it allows council to approve the interim pump station.
And that's just a sworn statement from the developer that.
No, I think
that
we'd want to
after
see like,
talking with Mr. Johnson, he, you know, he ain't moving.
I think it would be more than that. There's usually with those kind of things, there's email trails, paperwork, letters, all that kind of stuff. It's similar to what we do when we're buying property. There's a very clear paper record of it. So they would need to show those kind of things to show that they did make that effort.
So you'll be standing in here complaining to us. I mean, it'll be easy to know. They'll be right there and saying, I don't want my property. I don't want you going through my property.
Any other questions for Mark? Does anyone have any heartburn about this? And if so, state it now. Otherwise, we're just going to assume by our quietness that this is an okay deal. Looks to be an okay deal. Fair enough? Okay, Sharon, come on up. You've hung out with us for this. Let's see where we are. Let's see what Mark is, Mark's homework, what Mark's done for your homework.
All right. And all my free time here, I think I got through it. So the first thing it says is that in order to even ask for the appeals process, you have to meet 3 things. One, it's being a single family residence, which is true. It's denied solely because of law, regulation, or ordinance. Again, that's true. We very clearly have an ordinance that says within 600 feet, you connect. Does that make sense? And then C is absent the applicable law, regulation, or ordinance requiring the connection to the system, which the denial is based, this would be approved. So the county allows septic systems. If we didn't have this rule, and honestly, we have other places in the city where they're more than 600 feet away, septic's failed. You know, we sign a thing that it's automatic because our code doesn't require it because it's more than that. So that part's true. So of that first requirement, it seems like everything is met. And so kind of there's some other stuff in there that I don't think applies, but the next part of it is administrative appeals process required by the section must at a minimum consider whether, and then there's 4 things. There's 2 that are pretty straightforward, so I'll start with those. The public sewer system performance or financing considerations related to allowing the property owner to repair or replace the on-site septic system. So this really isn't going to affect any financing of the city. It's a one-off. It's, you know, it doesn't seem like that's an issue. Second one is there are financial assistance programs or latecomer agreements offered by the city or state. I've heard this question before. Cities obviously doesn't offer any programs. I've never heard of any state or county program. We had one down on Parkway several years back, and they had some low income issues, and it was the same. There wasn't a lot of assistance out there. So I think that's pretty straightforward. It's cost prohibitive is the next one. So based on what was provided, the
Septic system is about 21,000 to replace, which includes the permit and the install. And then if they go with the sewer system, it's about 70, just under 76,000, which includes our SDC fee and then the install. And I can confirm that that line out there is a good 20, if not 25 feet deep. If you remember, that was where Grace was torn up for years, and Rachi struggled mightily to get it in. And it has to be that deep because it ultimately serves all the way up to just short of Eaton. So there was purpose for that. But even a large company like Rachi definitely struggled to get that system in just because of the depth, high groundwater, all the typical things you find in battleground. The harder one is the last one, which is there's public health or environmental considerations related to allowing the property owner to repair or replace. In complying with this subsection, the city must consider whether the repair to replace on-site septic system contributes to pollution of surface waters or groundwater. So there's no one with a straight face that can tell you septic is better than going to a public system. There's more impact to the environment with the septic. It's a fact. I think what you could look at in this case is it's literally one. We're not talking about 1,000 septic systems. We're talking about one system. So again, the public is going to be more environmentally friendly, but we're talking about one system. So
in your reading of this, does she meet the RCW?
I think she can make a good argument that she meets the RCW.
Thank
It
you.
is absolutely up to council with which direction to go. You can deny it or you can approve it, but I think there's strong argument here based especially on the cost to move forward with it.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
So I got two questions for you, Mark. And you kind of hit on it a little bit, but I think Discovery Clean Water Alliance at one time was giving some rebates for hooking in to the public system.
I don't remember with DCY. I know Vancouver has a program where they it's almost like an economy of scale thing where they go put a system in, and if you decide to join up now and eliminate it, they'll let it go on your tax rolls where you can pay it off over time. Because there's multiple people doing it, it's cheaper than if you try to do it on your own. So I know Vancouver for sure. It does sound familiar. I'm just not as familiar with the Clean Water Alliance.
Okay. So because one of the things that concerns me is, we obviously want people to hook to our systems. We've got, and I don't think a lot of people know this, but we've got a lot of septic systems they're in the city, but they're in the country, in the city.
Yeah.
We've got
My neighbors.
we got people in the
5
city.
of my neighbors
Yeah.
have the sand system.
Yeah, so I think that the biggest concern for me is obviously, the cost. If it's cost prohibitive, then yeah, we need to work around that and approve it. And to say it's 3 times, that's crazy to think it's 3 times as much. 25,000 is a lot of money for a homeowner to cough up to put in a failing septic system. But 75,000 is a lot of money to hook up to what most people would say, you're going to charge me 75,000 to hook into a pipe. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but I think if there's a way, and I don't know, this is a discussion for later, is to figure out how we can incentivize people coming in. I know we put the ARPA funds available for the future sewer expansion, but maybe there's some things that we can do to help those that would like to hook up that makes it a little bit more cost effective. But I think, I don't know, do we need a motion to approve it or just? Well, she's made the appeal, hasn't she, to us tonight?
Yeah, I think this process is the appeal.
So
yeah, I think motion.
Yeah, so a motion to approve or deny the appeal.
Hold on just a moment. Let's hear from Mr. Cortez.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess from an emotional standpoint, I wanna be like, yeah, how can we help you, right? But also too, I want to make sure that we don't set a precedent that now other people are gonna be like, oh, I want to do, I want to do this, take advantage of this. that it is for very extenuating circumstances, right? I think Councilmember Bowman is spot on. I think this does present a particular opportunity to look at this and see, maybe we can create a program, whether it's, some vehicle where we allow homeowners to, 5 years to spread out their payments. But at the end of the day, though, these to hook up to our sewer, they're paying their fair share, right? We don't, everybody has to pay their fair share of maintaining our infrastructure, and it costs an enormous amount of money to do that. And all of us are paying for that, right, in our taxes. So I don't think, I wouldn't be in favor of people not paying their fair share in that regard. So, and I guess I'll defer to Councilmember Bowman because he kind of brought it up. What is the language you're looking for on a potential motion?
Yeah, I think it would be a motion to approve the appeal and allow a septic system.
Well, the one thing that I see the difference between what she has and what you and I have, since we live in the same neighborhood, our pipe is roughly 7-8 feet deep, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And hers is 25 feet plus, plus under a ton of rock and tons of rock. So there is a little difference there, but I agree also with Mr. Cortez in the sense of that, as an example, my neighbors, it's kind of tough to tell us that the pipe's 25 feet and when the mayor lives next door to you, and no, it's just right there. And it's 6 feet down. So I do agree with you as well, sir, that if someone comes forward in the future, that I guess we just look at it case by case, or we just have a policy. It's just a straight policy.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things we can do. I believe, I'm not sure if it's Clark Regional or somebody, but they actually have a cost threshold for, this is what we consider too much. So you could have a policy that builds on what the state law says, say, hey, it must be at least X amount of times to, for the gravity system versus the septic system. You can, hey, we want to see 3 quotes. In this case, there was only the 1 quote, you could say we want to see 3 quotes, at least in the paperwork I received.
Nope. Stop on your head.
Things like that. So yeah, there's ways you could add to it to make it more, where you would have to meet things where it's not, looks like a free for all. The other thing I would add to maybe provide some comfort is this is only allowed for existing single family situation. If she came in and said, hey, now I want to add a second house on there, there's no question. You connect to the sewer system. Once you develop, it's connect or you're not building.
Gotcha.
So yeah, this purely can be used on an existing house.
Yes, sir.
That was gonna be my question, is how many bids were there? And were there companies that do this? Obviously, for me, we're going 10 feet and I heard 71,000, and probably your job probably dropped more than mine because it's not my checkbook, but I mean, something doesn't calculate there for me. It's the rock and the depth, I'm guessing.
Actually, the funny thing is I wanted sewer. When I saw that they're building a subdivision over there, I talked to Tim Ralston, the developer. I met with Rachi, and Rachi actually said that would be ridiculous. We won't do it. And I have talked to Rachi, I've talked to Clark County Septic and Sewer. I've talked to Basil Rachi. They've all come out and looked at the property. Nobody will even do it. Even if I gave them $75,000, nobody will do it. And that was my problem when I wanted it. And now that I have to have it, I've reapproached all these people and they're still like, no, this isn't conducive. And our well is right at the end of the driveway. So like, here's Grace and our well is right there. And that causes some problems as well, I guess, because they have to be a certain amount away from the well and stuff. So it's like just a kind of a anomaly case. So if anybody tried to say, well, they got to do it, it wouldn't match up, because it's like nobody, if you can find somebody to do it, but nobody will do it. So I'm not only it being so atrociously expensive, it's kind of a weird case where it's just a bad thing. Does that make sense?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the appeal to allow her to put in a septic system.
Second.
Can I say something else though, real quick?
Well,
Because I may have an appearance of.
I'd like your motion to mention her address.
Sharon, what's your address?
3415 Southeast Grace Avenue, Battleground.
3415 Southeast Grace Avenue. Now, just for council and I guess for Mr. Ellis, I know Sharon personally. I've coached two of her kids, so I don't know if I need to recuse myself from this or not. It doesn't affect my decision. They were great kids, but I do.
I assume they still are.
They are great kids.
To recuse yourself, you gotta recuse yourself before discussion. So you're in
Well-
the fight, brother.
All right, I'm in.
You
Never
made a
mind.
motion.
Never mind. I'm in.
I don't.
It's not gonna affect my
You can
decision,
abstain.
but
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I already seconded.
Oh,
it.
you did. I'm sorry. Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, just let's do a roll call on that.
Councilmember Davis? Yes. Councilmember Cortez?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes,
Councilmember Bowman?
I will abstain.
cool.
Councilmember McCoy?
Yes.
Councilmember Walters?
Yes.
Motion
Okay, Sharon, go tell all your friends that we aren't as bad as they make us out to be.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone. And sorry if I was ever rude to anybody on the phone. I've been a little frustrated through this whole process, but I appreciate all of your time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sharon. Pleasure.
Well done on the pop quiz.
Okay, Ms. Erdman, we're moving on to the administrative reports.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Herzig. Once again, we did receive some appraisals back for property next for the Grace Avenue project. And so we need to get some approval to move forward on that. So Mr. Herzig.
So like Aaron said, we got the appraisals back for the property next to the auto body shop. Essentially, the city's process is we take the appraisal that establishes fair market value. We will go make that offer to the owner. Our policy gives the city engineer up to 25% of leeway not to exceed $10,000. So essentially, in this case, since the 10,000 is going to be the limiting factor, that's staff's ability to negotiate with it. If the counter offer comes back at, higher than that amount, then we would bring that back to council like you've seen in a couple previous examples. So all we're looking for is a thumbs up to move forward at the fair market value according to city policy and go from there.
Have we gone through the other properties that we're looking at as well?
No, this one,
This was just.
this was a one-off that came on the market. So as that process, and we're getting closer, other than an environmental issue that we're working on, we'll have a right-of-way phase where there's actually some federal funds and TIB funds that are in our right-of-way phase that we'll use to do the rest of the properties. But because this one became available, we use traffic, or actually, I think traffic and concurrency mitigation fees to go after it. So it didn't get bought up and developed and then cause us a bigger issue down the road.
Any other questions?
So we're authorizing you to go up to the 10,000,
Fair market value
Fair market
plus
plus
or minus 10,000.
but we don't know what that is, and we won't discuss that.
Does anyone have any heartburn with Mark doing that?
Sir.
Nope.
I don't see any. Carry on.
Great. That concludes administrative reports.
Okay, and I will ask one quick question here just for my edification. Shall we go ahead and close the meeting and then talk about, because closed session does not require us to come back, does it? If it does, we won't close the meeting. We'll just let the meeting run.
Does not require-
So I'll go ahead and close the meeting, and then I will state for that the city council will hold a closed session to discuss Teamsters bargaining authority pursuant to RCW 42.30.140. The Open Public Meeting Act does not apply to certain types of meetings, including meetings to discuss collective bargaining matters. Our next meeting date is September 19th, starting at 7 o'clock. See you then.
Okay, what time are you gonna?
Doesn't matter.
We're gonna go.
It's just whenever we start.
Take-
There's no- there's no
I just want to go to the bathroom.
Take 5 minutes.
Okay.
10 minutes, whatever you need.
I'm gonna go get some lunch, dinner.
Not whatever you need.
You can have it.
I'm gonna go grab some dinner then. I'll be right back.
Saving my risotto, man. I got risotto waiting at home. It's killing me.
I'm gonna order pizza.
When we met it.
That implies that we're gonna be here at least 45 minutes, so.
I'm gonna be like,
Okay.
yeah. Or just in the middle of the meeting, Domino's shows up.
Yes.
Thank you, Kaylee.
All right, where we going?
Back in our normal abode.
Yeah.